Greetings, and welcome to the Culture Ward, where we dissect and dismember pop culture in all its forms. Before we begin, please take a second to hit that subscribe button and help us grow the channel. And don't forget to like and share the video if you enjoy the content. Now let's get into it. The Marvel Cinematic Universe is an interconnected collection of movies, ongoing series, and television specials created by Marvel Studios, which began in 2008 with the original Iron Man film, and which continues to the present day, with the most recent entry being Fantastic Four: First Steps, which is still in theaters as we speak. The MCU, as it is known, quickly became a box office juggernaut, with quite a few entries breaking the billion-dollar barrier, and a couple even cracking $2 billion. For more than a decade, it seemed that the MCU could do no wrong, with the first three phases of films, known collectively as the Infinity Saga, culminating in Avengers: Endgame, the second highest grossing movie of all time. However, all good things must come to an end, as the saying goes, and following Endgame, Disney, who had acquired Marvel a few years previously, launched its own streaming service, Disney+, and therefore demanded an increase in output from Marvel, specifically including shows that they could air on the fledgling streaming platform. This move led to a proliferation of Marvel content over the next few years, and as could be expected, the quality of that content greatly suffered. It didn't help that Disney and Marvel also leaned heavily into identity politics and heavy-handed political messaging at the same time, not only making a lot of content less interesting, but also alienating large swaths of the fan base. It wasn't all bad though. Marvel still managed to turn out a few good projects in the time since Endgame, and lately, following a pledge from newly rehired CEO Bob Iger to focus more on quality going forward, and a very public turn away from political messaging, at least ostensibly, Marvel does seem to be trying to revitalize the brand, with recent movies like The Thunderbolts and The Fantastic Four being marked improvements over other recent entries. At any rate, to date there have been, according to my count, 50 MCU projects, which includes 37 feature films, 12 Disney Plus streaming series, and one holiday special. Earlier this week, we took a look at an article by Variety magazine where they rated all these MCU projects from worst to best, and we laughed and gasped and cried at some of their ridiculous rankings. And I promised that I would put together a proper MCU ranking in response to Variety's failed, albeit entertaining, attempt. And so I have. And it wasn't easy. I think the top and bottom 10 are pretty solid, but that middle 30 is kind of tentative. What I mean is that several of the movies and shows could be ranked higher or lower based on my mood at any given time. And maybe even more so if I actually had the nerve to revisit any of them. All that to say, this list is not set in stone, and there are very few hills I'll die on here. But I will stand behind my top 10 and bottom 10. Anyway, we got a lot to cover, so let's get into this thing. To start us off, coming in dead last, is the Disney Plus streaming show Secret Invasion, starring Samuel L. Jackson as Nick Fury. This show was terrible, turning Nick Fury into a weak and broken old man, retroactively replacing James Rhodes with a Skrull since Captain America: Civil War, and making the show an allegory for transgender acceptance. It was awful all around, and earned its spot at the bottom of the pile. Next up, number 49, second to last, is She-Hulk, starring Tatiana Maslany as the titular character. This show really wanted to be last place, but the fact that it didn't take itself too seriously was its only saving grace. This is a show that made actual fans, reduced to online trolls, the primary antagonist, and then blame those same fans for the show's poor ratings. And it deserves its spot near the bottom of this list. Number 48, Ironheart, a show so bad that even Marvel tried to bury it. Starring Dominique Thorne as Riri Williams, a diverse super genius who joins a criminal gang in order to get money to build an Iron Man suit for herself so that she can be iconic. The only redeeming quality of the show was having Sacha Baron Cohen appear as Mephisto near the end of the series. Number 47, Agatha All Along, the gayest Marvel project, and apparently the only thing this show had going for it. They took a secondary antagonist from a previous Disney Plus show, WandaVision, and made her the protagonist of her own show, apparently to promote LGBT bullshit and confront stereotypes of, quote, difficult women as witches, or something. It's just so cringeworthy. Coming in at 46, The Marvels. What was supposed to be a sequel to 2019's Captain Marvel turned into an ensemble piece featuring not only Brie Larson's Captain Marvel, but two other virtually unknown characters from Disney Plus shows. And the result was an incoherent mess of a film, with a plot literally stolen from Spaceballs. Suck! It did win one distinction though. It is the biggest flop in MCU history. Coming in at 45, The Eternals. Released in 2021, this sprawling, unfocused, and boring entry about a bloated cast of Z-tier comic characters no one's ever heard of or cares about spent the first hour and a half just introducing everyone. Dull, washed-out scenes over a convoluted and dragging plot made this one difficult to get through. Number 44, Echo. A Disney Plus show about a deaf, dumb, disabled Native American girl who's probably gay too. Introduced in the Hawkeye show, Echo was a crime boss who was supposed to have a redemption arc in this series, and she gets in touch with her native heritage or something. And anyway, she spirits away the Kingpin's trauma with some sort of rain dance. It's absolutely hideous. But it did have Daredevil in it for a few minutes, which kept this from the bottom. Number 43, Ms. Marvel. A forgettable but inoffensive Disney Plus show about a Pakistani Muslim superhero who gets her powers from the mail. Literally, her grandmother mails her a bracelet that gives her these weird Green Lantern-style stretchy powers. Not a terrible show, the actress is fairly likable at least, but it's pretty dull and not really a serious entry in the MCU. Number 42, Thor: Love and Thunder. This movie was really colorful and had a good soundtrack and a few minutes with the Guardians of the Galaxy, but it was an emotionally jarring journey into absurdity, with a frenetic pace like it came from the minds of two 8-year-olds. Christian Bale's Gore the God Butcher had potential to be a frightening villain, but it was always undercut with Taika Waititi's constant jokes, which, for some reason, weren't even funny in this movie. Number 41, Captain Marvel. This movie is one of the most overrated of all time. It earned over $1 billion at the box office, but only because it was sandwiched between Infinity War and Endgame, and a lot of people, myself included, thought it was an important backstory. The movie felt rushed. Brie Larson displayed the acting range of a boulder, and her story arc was basically a straight line. Definition of a Mary Sue. She didn't have to do anything to become the most powerful being in the universe, except believe in herself. Number 40, Black Widow. Man, they did ScarJo wrong with this movie. What should have been a spy thriller set in the time before Iron Man turned into a thinly veiled allegory for Me Too Time's Up, with the big bad being basically Harvey Weinstein. And it was more an introduction to Yelena Belova, the new Black Widow, than it was an homage to Natasha Romanoff, the real Black Widow. It was just another identity politics feminist fever dream that squandered one of the best characters in the MCU. ScarJo deserved better. Number 39, Moon Knight. Oscar Isaacs was good, and the story was intriguing for the first couple of episodes. Then it devolved into a messy plot with uneven pacing and a rather absurd premise involving the Egyptian afterlife and Egyptian gods that at one point manifest as giants who have a fist fight in front of the pyramids. And they couldn't help but put in the Scarlet Scarab, a female Egyptian superhero, to always be there to one-up the Moon Knight. Once again, it was an intriguing concept and a cool character that ultimately fell flat. Number 38, Falcon and the Winter Soldier. This was another Disney Plus show that could have been really interesting. A grounded story about the ramifications of the Infinity War Endgame blip and the repatriation of half the world's population that disappeared and then reappeared 5 years later. But it too turned into a postmodern lecture on immigration and capitalism, literally trying to get the audience to empathize with terrorists.
You've got to do better, Senator. You've got to step up. Because if you don't, the next Carly will.
Shame too. Bucky deserved better. Number 37, Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania. I like Paul Rudd. That's the best thing I can say about this movie. It was a mess. Some of the visuals were cool, and Jonathan Majors sometimes portrayed Kang as a menacing and formidable villain, albeit one who was ultimately beaten by ants. And MODOK was ridiculous, but he was always ridiculous in the comics too, so that didn't really bother me. However, while I didn't hate it as much as some people, it deserves its spot near the bottom of this list for its fragmented plot lines and Cassie's irritating self-righteousness. Number 36, Captain America: Brave New World. Another mess of a film. That seems to be a theme in Phase 4 and 5, I guess since they were pumping out content too fast for any quality control. Clearly it was ripped up and reshot and edited to hell, being 2 or more films pieced together in a slapshot manner. What a shame. I like Anthony Mackie, but Steve Rogers is Captain America. Number 35, Loki. Probably the Disney Plus show I was most excited about, and which thus disappointed me the most. The first season was barely even about our Loki. It was focused instead on the smarter, stronger, and better at everything female variant, Lady Loki, who calls herself Sylvie for some reason. And the ending of Season 1 was nonsensical. Season 2 was better. I actually liked pretty much the whole thing, until the end, which again was nonsensical. Number 34, Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings. This was a forgettable movie, but not the worst thing in the world. Kind of boring for most of the time. There was some pretty cool fight choreography, which is when this film was at its best, but the story was kind of silly, Awkwafina was annoying, and of course, Shang-Chi's sister overshadowed him in every way, being better, stronger, smarter than him without even trying. Literally in the movie, while Shang-Chi was being trained by the greatest fighters in the world, his sister wasn't allowed to train, so she trained herself to be better than all of them. They just can't help themselves. Number 33, WandaVision. Cool premise. First few episodes were really good, intriguing, and different from other Marvel projects. The story kind of went off the rails about halfway through, but I still enjoyed the sitcom through the decades aesthetic, and the episode with Quicksilver played by Evan Peters was entertaining enough. But by the end, it just kind of all fell apart. Not terrible, but not great either. Number 32, Black Panther: Wakanda Forever. Ostensibly a touching tribute to the passing of Chadwick Boseman, although the cynic in me suspects that they just exploited his death in the film. But they should have recast T'Challa. The movie wasn't great. They ruined a great villain from the comics, Namor the Submariner. I think partially because of some weird rights issue. They don't own the Submariner, maybe. And the plot, was just ridiculous. I'm not even sure it should rank this high on the list, but the performances from the cast were pretty good, and there were a couple of scenes that worked well. Number 31, Hawkeye, the Disney Plus series. It wasn't bad. It was a more lighthearted entry in the MCU, meant to be a fun and entertaining Christmas show. The show was clearly meant to introduce Hawkeye's replacement, Kate Bishop, but they actually showed respect for Hawkeye. Usually in these bait-and-switch shows, they tear down the legacy character, usually male, to introduce the stronger, smarter, and better at everything replacement character, usually female and or diverse, but they didn't do that in this show. While it was kind of stupid and the final fight scene was pure silliness, it's still decent enough light entertainment. Number 30, Daredevil: Born Again. I really wanted this to be a good show. Daredevil is one of my favorite characters. When I heard they had fired the creative team halfway through production and brought on Dario Scartapane, who worked on some of the Netflix Marvel shows, I was excited. Unfortunately, it was too little too late. The show was cut and edited and pieced together in a messy, unfocused, and underwhelming affair. Maybe Season 2 will be better? 29, Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness. Not a great movie, kind of sloppy in the storytelling department, and America Chavez is annoying most of the time. But I did enjoy Sam Raimi's flourishes. Sometimes it was creepy, sometimes goofy, and occasionally earnest. And the visuals were a lot of fun. I enjoyed the movie. Number 28, The Thunderbolts. One of the better movies to come out of the post-Endgame slot machine. They tried to tell a more grounded story, one that dealt with trauma and depression in a less lighthearted effort. It was pretty good, although I just never really warmed up to Yelena Belova. Florence Pugh is a decent actress, but that fake Russian accent is just exasperating. Number 27, Ant-Man and the Wasp. Pretty fun movie. It came right after Avengers: Infinity War, and was a more lighthearted adventure with smaller stakes, no pun intended. That was a nice break from universe-ending threats. Paul Rudd is always fun. It was a light and easy summer flick. Number 26, the Guardians of the Galaxy Holiday Special. I wasn't sure where to put this thing. I mean, it was fine. It doesn't really relate to the broader MCU in a narrative sense, but it did establish that the Guardians purchased nowhere, and that Peter and Mantis were half-siblings. But anyway, it was fun and light holiday cheer, so I figure it deserves somewhere in the 20s. Alright, number 25, The Incredible Hulk. Unfairly maligned, it was one of the movies that launched the MCU. And I actually like Edward Norton's portrayal of Bruce Banner. Probably more than Mark Ruffalo's. I know the movie wasn't the best, and definitely had a messy third act, but overall, I think this one deserves another look. Number 24, Spider-Man Far From Home. Set right after Endgame, it kind of deals with the death of Tony Stark, although it never gets too emotionally heavy. Mysterio looked really great, although introducing one of Spider-Man's arch enemies just to kill him off right away was kind of stupid in my opinion. Not the best movie, but it was fun enough to make the top 25. Number 23, Thor: The Dark World. Another MCU entry that gets unfairly treated. It was a little darker than most, a little serious at times. I thought the Dark Elves were pretty cool, although I acknowledge that Christopher Eccleston kind of phoned in his performance. Nowhere near the best of the Infinity Saga, but it is miles better than most of the crap since Endgame, and also worth a second look. Number 22, Iron Man 3. Shane Black's Iron Man wasn't as inspired as either of the first two movies, but it was still a worthy entry in the series. I especially enjoyed the stripped-down second act when Tony has to rely on his own ingenuity to get the job done. 21, Black Panther. One of the most overrated movies in the MCU, Black Panther was still a decent superhero film and featured some pretty good performances from an all-star cast, especially Chadwick Boseman's T'Challa and Michael B. Jordan's Killmonger. Points off for the obvious pandering and infantilizing African culture, but overall, it was a moderately enjoyable watch. Almost made the top 20. Number 20, Spider-Man Homecoming. The first of the Tom Holland Spider-Man movies featuring the Vulture as portrayed by Michael Keaton, who turned in a great performance. It was fun, down-to-earth action that also cleverly skips the origin story. Tom Holland will never be Tobey Maguire, but he's likable enough. Alright, inside the top 20, we have Ant-Man coming in at number 19. A fun and easily digestible heist film with great performances by Paul Rudd, Michael Douglas, and Michael Pena. Some of the smaller stakes stories are the most fun, and this definitely delivers on that. Number 18, Fantastic Four: First Steps. I'm as surprised as you are. I can't believe Marvel put out a movie in 2025 that breaks my top 20 list. But this movie was actually pretty good. Pedro fatigue aside, the cast did a great job as Marvel's first family. The direction was actually good, the visuals were good, the set design was top-notch, and Galactus was terrifying, at least part of the time. Emotionally poignant at times, exciting at times, and rarely dull or clunky. Number 17, Deadpool and Wolverine. This one is peculiar. It doesn't really fit into the main MCU universe as it takes place in some alternate dimension, but it still ties into the multiverse or blah blah blah. Whatever, it's a Deadpool movie that brought back Hugh Jackman as a Wolverine, along with a bunch of other nostalgia bait cameos and callbacks. It was funny, it was fun, it did what it was meant to do. Number 16, Doctor Strange. The origin story of Doctor Strange kind of drags in the first act, but it delivers an emotional journey which culminates in one of my favorite endings in the MCU, the time loop with Dormammu. Benedict Cumberbatch was perfect casting for the arrogant narcissist Stephen Strange, and he and Tilda Swinton delivered great performances. Number 15, Avengers: Age of Ultron. Another of the unfairly treated MCU properties, Age of Ultron was actually pretty clever and enjoyable. I'm not a big fan of the third act Ultron battle, but even it had its moments. But this movie's strength was in its quieter moments, such as when the team stay at Hawkeye's farm. And James Spader as Ultron is just one of my favorite casting choices. Number 14, Iron Man 2. The second movie in the series, one of the first in the MCU, not as good as the original, and Whiplash is a slightly underwhelming villain, but Sam Rockwell as Hammer is priceless. And despite his character not being overly compelling, Mickey Rourke actually turned in a pretty good performance. Number 13, Avengers: Endgame. See, it didn't even crack my top 10. There were parts of this movie that I really enjoyed. It was an emotional and mostly satisfying end to the decade-long Infinity Saga, but as I have complained recently, there were many things that I didn't like about it. But hey, it was a huge spectacle, and I like how it focused more on our core Avengers than previous entries. Number 12, Guardians of the Galaxy 3. Emotionally satisfying ending to the trilogy. James Gunn dialed back the humor on this one, letting the emotional moments breathe, and it really worked. While it was a little manipulative at times, overall it was fun, endearing, emotional, and ultimately uplifting. And honestly, the High Evolutionary is one of the best villains in the MCU. Number 11, Spider-Man No Way Home. A Phase 4 movie almost made it into the top 10. Now, admittedly, this movie was good largely because of the member berries. Remember Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield and Willem Dafoe? But it was still a gripping and emotionally satisfying movie that was also thoroughly entertaining. Alright, and now we're in the top 10. Starting it out at number 10, Thor. The first Thor movie is often overlooked, but the performances of the cast alone in this film bring it into the top 10. Anthony Hopkins, Stellan Skarsgård, Tom Hiddleston, and Chris Hemsworth all committed to their roles, and frankly, Norse mythology never felt so accessible. Number 9, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. All the Guardians movies were good. This one was a little sillier than the others, and Ego the Planet is kind of a ridiculous concept, but it was still a fun and entertaining movie, and not without its emotional payload. Michael Rooker's Yondu stole the show. Number 8, Thor Ragnarok. This movie shouldn't have worked. Taika Waititi took the MCU's most serious and stoic characters and turned them all into comic relief. But somehow it worked for me. I laugh at this movie every time I watch it, but the comedy doesn't totally drain the movie of emotional weight. I just really enjoyed this film. Number 7, Captain America: The First Avenger. What can you say? It's Steve Rogers' origin story. A period piece set during World War II and has Cap fighting literal Nazis. What more could you want from Captain America? One of the best of the MCU for sure. Number 6, Captain America: Civil War. While I didn't like how the movie ended, with Tony going savage mode because a brainwashed guy was brainwashed, it was a great action movie overall. One of the peculiar things about it is that the versions of both the Black Panther and Tom Holland's Spider-Man were better in this movie than in their own respective movies. If these versions had transferred to their own films, they would likely rate a lot higher. Alright, now we're into the top 5 MCU of all time. At number 5, Joss Whedon's The Avengers. It was clever, it was well written, great pacing, and it tied together the first phase of the MCU perfectly, opening up the cosmic threat of phases 2 and 3 while still staying mostly on the ground, figuratively speaking. And Mark Ruffalo is fine as the Hulk, I guess. This movie is a blueprint for how to do a superhero team-up film. Number 4, Iron Man, the one that started it all. Jon Favreau brought a B-list superhero to the big screen with a smart and accessible origin story, and Robert Downey Jr. sold the character in a way few could have guessed possible, taking this B-list comic book hero to the top of the A-list. Iron Man is the flagship of the MCU and is still a thrill to watch all these years later. Number 3, Guardians of the Galaxy. An entire team of unknown comic characters set in an entirely unfamiliar setting, totally disconnected, or so it seemed, from the MCU. James Gunn surprised a lot of people, same as me. This movie was hilariously entertaining, yet still had plenty of heart, and took a freaking talking raccoon and an anthropomorphic tree and made them household names. Number 2, Avengers: Infinity War. This one was very close to number 1. It was a fast-paced, super busy, high-stakes adventure across the entire galaxy with an ensemble cast of dozens of characters, major and minor. It had all the hallmarks of an overly ambitious mess. However, the Russo brothers somehow took all those characters and all those locations and all those disparate story elements and made a tight, focused, thrilling, and emotionally poignant thriller, and tops it off with a killer twist ending. It was a masterclass in narrative structure and pacing, and the gold standard for how to develop a compelling antagonist. And finally, drumroll, in the number 1 spot, the greatest thing Marvel Studios has ever produced is Captain America and the Winter Soldier. It was a battle between this and Infinity War, but in the end, the smaller, more intimate story and the focus on the characterization of our leads pushed this to the top spot. This movie would make a great spy thriller by itself outside of the MCU, but it worked extremely well in context as well. This is what Black Widow's movie should have emulated, a suspenseful action thriller about a rogue agent working to clear his name. I can't say enough good things about this one. It's the one I go back and watch most often. And that's it, the MCU ranked from worst to best. Like I said earlier, the middle 30 or so entries are subject to change, and my mind is open to argument on many of these rankings. But I think overall, they're all generally in the right place. Like, a bottom tier movie isn't going to move up to top tier or vice versa, no matter how hard you argue. Anyway, what do you think? How do my rankings stack up against yours? Are there any that stand out as way out of line? Join the conversation in the comments below. As always, thank you so much for watching. Please like and subscribe if you enjoy the content. Bye for now. We hope to see you next time in the Culture Ward.